In this edition of In the Trenches with Dave Lapham, brought to you by First Star Logistics, my special guest, quarterback Ken Anderson, number 14 in your program, number 1 in your heart, fresh off being elected to the Ring of Honor, and richly deserved, to say the least. Hopefully, it's an impetus to get him into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Come on, Canton, Ohio. You're better than that. He's the only quarterback in NFL history, the only one to lead the NFL in passing in consecutive years in 2 different decades. He did it in the 70s. He did it in the 80s. Nobody else has accomplished that feat. And that's with different coordinators, different schemes, different teammates. He's great. He belongs in the Hall of Fame. I think you're going to like listening to what Ken Anderson has to say. A lot of people have asked me over the years, what is quarterback Ken Anderson's biggest attribute? My answer, simple. Everybody I talk to, teammates, opponents, all have the same answer. His accuracy. It was pinpoint. He threw the ball straighter than anybody from point A to point B. I remember we worked together at a football camp in Connecticut called the Offense-Defense Camp. And we were both counselors there, and I was the center snapping to Kenny, and then he'd do some passing drills. And he'd have me about 25, 30 yards down the football field from him. And he was just throwing to spots. And it wasn't just throwing to anywhere in the body. He would identify, all right, forehead, ball was right there. Right shoulder, navel, left hip. Unbelievable. And this is from like 25, 30 yards away. He's putting darts exactly where he said he was going to put them. He was calling his shots and then following it up with unbelievable accuracy. And that'll get you out of a lot of trouble. I mean, in the National Football League, things open up and close quickly. Guys in the NFL can close the gap in a hurry on anybody. So you have to get the ball out with timing and accuracy. And Ken Anderson did that as well or better than anybody. And he put up numbers that are worthy of the Hall of Fame. Ken Anderson, Ring of Honor, might be the first step to Canton, Ohio, in the Hall of Fame, which he so richly deserves. Welcome once again to our luxurious First Star Logistics studios. You're in the trenches with Dave Lapham, and very, very special guest today, just after being named to the Ring of Honor, the legendary Ken Anderson. K.A., what's up, my man?
Oh, not much. Just excited to go into the inaugural class with, Kenny Riley and Anthony and Paul Brown.
Yeah, what does that mean to you? I mean, you're talking about 4 stalwarts. I mean, the organization, those 4 names just ring true to everybody when you think about the Cincinnati Bengals. What does it mean to you to go in with that group?
Well, of course, that's special, Dave. But I think the thing I'm most excited about is – we've got a rich tradition of winning and success in Cincinnati, and I think that gets overlooked a lot, especially by the national media and some disgruntled fans at this point. But, you were a product of the 70s, and, in 73, 74, 75, 76, we were as good as anybody in the National Football League. And, you and I had the very good fortune of going into the 80s, but just so, hopefully we bring back the memories of guys like Bob Johnson and Trumpy and Tommy Casanova and Essex Johnson and, Vernon Holland, Mike Reed. I mean, the list goes on and on of the great players we had. How can I forget Isaac Curtis, the best receiver the Bengals have ever had. So just that we now get a little recognition for those years, I think is very satisfying.
Yeah, and all those guys you talk about, the names you just listed there, Kenny, unbelievable human beings. I mean, everybody had such great relationships, such great friendships, even to this day. I mean, just a special group of guys.
Well, yeah, and Dave, things were so much different in those days. We had no off-season programs because everybody worked. We had a 3-day mini camp. And so we went to camp July 7th, and we were there for 9 weeks.
Yeah.
And, and we were isolated. We're practicing twice a day in pads, both practices. But, there was no video of practices in those days. And, we had time to go out for a beer after the afternoon practice. And, after the night meeting, we had a chance to go to the bowling alley. And I think, we were around each other, when it was just the guys. And I think that really developed the chemistry in our teams.
I can't agree with you more. I mean, it's incredible. 2 months, 2 months living, you're not with your family. You're with your teammates. I mean, you're spending more time with your teammates than you are with your wife and kids by far during that stretch.
Oh, no question. And, we'd be in camp a month before we'd have our scrimmage. And then after that, it was basically 6 preseason games. And as I remember, we did get the night off after a preseason game, as long as we were back in camp by about 4:00 the next afternoon.
Very true. Very true. So let's talk a little bit. Let's go back even into your childhood days as an athlete. I mean, you were an all-around athlete, my man. I mean, your neighborhood in Batavia, Illinois, it was yourself. It was Dan Issel. You guys had basically like neighboring backyards kind of
Yep.
deal, as I recall. And of course, Dan Issel in the Hall of Fame, playing for the Denver Nuggets and the Kentucky Colonels in the ABA. And then you had Von Hoff, your neighbor, was a heck of a baseball player, and he was a pitcher in minor leagues and had a career that was ended due to injury. You guys had some athletes in your neighborhood, didn't you?
No, we did. And I think, it was an advantage in those days. We grew up in a small town and there wasn't a lot to do. And so we're just getting together and we're playing every sport that's in season. We couldn't wait for the Street and Smith's baseball magazine to come out with the rosters of the teams so we could get our games going in the backyard. They started off with wiffle ball and then they moved to the playground and then they might move to the tennis courts. And, then when we got a little bit bigger, we go to the football field and, we play at midfield. So if you pulled one down the line, it went into the stands for a home run. And then, when baseball was over, we went into football and, we'd have all our games going in the backyard. Then it came time for basketball season. And, I don't know how many times my fingers were just, had all those cuts from being dry because we shoveled the basketball dry, of course, off the driveway and we'd play. And that's kind of what we did in a small town. And we were lucky to have the facilities to do it.
Talk about, for people that haven't heard this and don't understand how great an athlete your mom was. Your mom was a really special athlete.
Yeah, she was a good bowler. She was a good golfer. She had a heck of an arm, and she was a good softball player. In fact, I think we've all seen the movie about the girls' baseball teams. And they wanted my mom to come and play in Chicago, but my grandfather would not let an 18-year-old go from Elgin, Illinois into Chicago to play professional baseball.
I'll tell you, your parents are great people, just salt of the earth people. There's no question about it. I mean, how much credit do you give your parents for the type of athlete you turned out to be?
Well, they were always there for me, Dad. Dave, they both worked. My dad was the custodian at the high school. My mom was an office manager, an electrical switch factory, down the street from our house. But, no matter how much they worked, no matter how tired they were, they always had time for my sister and I.
You go to Augustana on a basketball scholarship, but then you end up working your way to the quarterback position at Augustana. Tell us how all that took place.
Well, there aren't any scholarships at Division III. And
right.
At that point in time, and, I think tuition and room and board was about $3,000 a year. And because I showed financial need and because I had very good grades, I got an Illinois State scholarship that covered half of it. The
Great.
College could give me $500 and I could make the rest in the summer because my folks, couldn't afford to help me out. But, I was going there to play basketball and baseball. I thought those were my two best sports. And at the last minute, in fact, I think the letter was dated like June 28th. I wrote Coach Steranko at Augustana to see if I could try out. And, at Division III at that time, they take any warm body to kind of fill out a roster. And so I was there and I was a little bit frustrated. You show up the first day and they had about 5 freshman quarterbacks that they had recruited. And the starter was a junior and they just come off winning the conference. The backup was also a junior. And I thought, what chance do I have? And I asked the coach, can I go play defense? And he said, nah, stick with quarterback for a while. And by they put me in the second game of the year at Sioux Falls, South Dakota. threw a 65-yard touchdown pass, and from then on, I was the starter.
How about that? That's an amazing story. And just now you're in the Hall of Fame at Augustana. What, 2003 was it when you went in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, no, that's quite an honor. And I liked what they did there when they started it, Dave. Is they went by decades of who they inducted, and I kind of hope that there's a little bit of that thought in the Bengals Ring of Honor as they go on, that we could start off with the 70s and go to the 80s and go to the 90s. So some of us guys that are my age and maybe a little bit older get a chance to enjoy it.
Yeah, there's no question. But a great college career. You get drafted by the Cincinnati Bengals in the third round. What, the 67th pick of the draft, I think, something like that.
Yep.
And you come to Cincinnati, and Paul Brown is the head coach, and Bill Walsh is the quarterback coach. How fortunate did you realize how fortunate you were, I guess?
Well, I was just happy to get the shot. And I, of course, I knew all about Paul Brown, and, Bill Walsh was just kind of the infancy of his coaching career.
Right.
But I think, we had a great draft class back then. Jim Plunkett was the number 1 pick, went to New England. Archie Manning was number 2 to New Orleans. Dan Pastorini was number 3 in the draft, went to Houston. Lynn Dickey went in the third round to Houston. Joe Theismann came right after me. And, I think it was Lynn Dickey that said, I was the lucky one because I went to Cincinnati with a good owner, a stable franchise, and a quarterback like Bill Walsh. And I think out of that class, I was the lucky one.
Well, you were the talented one as well. There's no question about that. Bill Walsh, everybody talks about that offensive mind. I mean, when you were tell me about how he broke you in as a quarterback. I remember you talking about the first X number of days, it was all footwork. You didn't even throw the football. Take us through the early stages of your development in your career with Bill Walsh.
Well, we would go and we would meet and literally we talk about a 3-step drop, and I would literally rotate my left foot, and then I would just walk in place, just stand in place 3 steps to get the feel and the balance of doing it. And we would do that for a week, and we do 3, a 3 and hold, a big 3, 5 quick, 5 and a hitch, 7, we did all the drops just standing still and moving your feet. Huh. And then the next week we started walking through, just literally walking through it. And then the third week we would, jog a little bit. And just so I had the timing and the feel and the balance of what we wanted to do. And then each day he would give me a stack of films, and I would go back to my apartment, and I had my own projector, and he would say, okay, go through all these and write down the formations. And I would do that, and I'd bring them in the next day, and we would talk about it, and then he'd give me the same stack and take it home and write down all the defensive fronts. And then we would kind of go through that, take the same stack home, and call out what plays they are. So it was nice in those days, Dave, that as a rookie, that I could move to, the draft was in January, that I could move to Cincinnati the first part of February and literally go through the installation several times before training camp.
Right. Paul Brown was coaching, obviously, at that point in time. What was he like? How many times did you actually sit down with him and really get into X's and O's? Was it that type of situation, or had he removed himself pretty much from that?
He removed himself pretty much at that time, Dave. And I think one of the things I really learned from Paul is that he'd hired great assistants and let them do their job.
Yep.
And he kind of managed things. He was a great judge of talent, a great judge knowing when the talent had declined and you were about at the end. I guess one of my regrets is I wish I had played for him maybe a little bit earlier, where he would have been more involved in the offense, because when you think about it, the way the NFL operates is all because of him. The first time to have a full-time coaching staff and to grade players and the time them in 40-yard dashes, the way that your day was structured during the season, that all started with Paul Brown.
You're exactly right. I mean, there's no question about it. Let me take you through some games in your illustrious career and just get your reaction to them. Let's talk Monday Night Football in 1975. Monday Night Football. Kenny Anderson, O.J. Simpson. In November of 1975, you throw for 447. O.J. rushes for 190. We win the football game. What's your biggest memory of that matchup, Kenny?
Well, I don't know why. I think what was special about that night, Dave, is that was the first Monday night game, regular season game in the Bengals' history up to that point.
Yep.
I think we had played a Monday night preseason game, but in those days it was just all local television, so there's nothing national. And then, have that Monday night and have, Howard Cosell and Dandy Don and Frank, come in and to see the city lit up and to see the stadium electric. What a special night that was.
So another game that was incredible against the Pittsburgh Steelers. You go 20 for 22 in that game against Pittsburgh, 90.7%, whatever it calculates out to. Just an incredible performance against a team that won the Super Bowl. What was that like?
Well, it was just trying to be patient in what we did, Dave. Pittsburgh had a great team, and we had this threat named Isaac Curtis, and they weren't going to let him beat them. And we had, I think Charlie Joyner might have still been on the team at that time.
Yep.
And they weren't going to let our wideouts, so they tried to go double them all the time, and we just kind of picked them apart with our running backs and our tight end. I know Doug Dressler had a big game, in that one. So, I think it was, like I say, it's just, taking what they gave us, and we just kept piling up first down after first down and scored enough touchdowns to win.
Chico State, Doug Dressler had a good game. That game was unbelievable. You played against Bradshaw 16 times, 8-8. They were good. I mean, they won Super Bowls and all that. But when you were playing against the Pittsburgh Steelers force at quarterback, it was a good battle, man. It was even Steven. There were a lot of victories for the Bengals.
Well, I think if you look back in that era, Dave, and you mark the Bengals winning percentage against the Steelers, we were almost 50-50.
Yep.
And I think the next team in the league was just over 30%. So we, had by far the best winning percentage against that great Steelers teams.
And then, of course, the other game, 20 straight completions against the Oilers. On the road, I believe, as I recall. Wasn't it down there in the Dome?
Yep.
And I remember, oh, man, it's like, do we say anything? Or it's almost like a guy pitching a no-hitter. You don't go up to him and say, hey, you got a no-hitter. I knew you'd thrown a lot in a row, but I didn't know it was, coming up on 20. And you complete 20 in a row. You hold that record for quite a while. What was that day like for you? Were you in a different zone?
Well, you get in those periods, Dave, where, every receiver looks wide open and the holes look big, and you're kind of going. And, Danny Ross and Isaac made some spectacular catches in that game to keep the streak going as well.
Yeah, but man, your accuracy is just it's ridiculous. I mean, everybody, teammates, opponents, everybody would talk about your pinpoint accuracy. And was that something that evolved? Did you have it from Jump Street once you were playing quarterback? What was the deal there?
Well, I think, I coached a long time too, and scouted a lot of quarterbacks, and you kind of study them. And, I think at some point, accuracy is a God-given ability. I think back to Sonny Jurgensen, and his arm could be at a million different angles, and it went from point A to point B where he wanted it to go.
Right.
So I think there's a little bit of that. I also think, a lot of it is, the Bill Walsh training that, to be accurate, you have to have balance, and your footwork gives you balance, and it gives you a chance to be accurate.
Let me get a little thumbnail sketch on guys that you've talked about as teammates over the years. Let's talk Bob Trumpy. What did Bob Trumpy mean to your career?
Well, I would say he was Gronkowski before Gronkowski. He was that 6'5" guy, and of course, he didn't weigh as much as the tight ends do today. But he was one of the first ones that we could flank outside and have him run wide receiver routes, which was a tremendous mismatch, in those days. And, so, yeah, Bob was a tremendous tight end.
And you talked about Isaac Curtis, a little bit more about Sweet Ice.
Well, he was a world-class sprinter. They wanted him to try out for the Olympic relay team.
Yep.
He went to college at Cal as a running back. And then transferred to San Diego State, where Don Coryell was at. He became a wide receiver. But, unlike some sprinters that have tried to play football, Isaac was a football player that was fast. He could run tremendous routes. He could get in and out of breaks. And he always had another gear. Dave, if we had a streak pattern called, I'd drop back 5 quick steps as quick as I could and let it go as far as I could. I couldn't outthrow him.
Yeah, he was unbelievable.
At First Star Logistics, we're a very strict company that really puts the pressure on our employees. Breaks? What are those?
That's what I'm talking about, Icky. Get the body right, then the mind's right.
You know, gotta get that body right.
That's right.
Yes, sir.
Become a star with a chance to earn the highest commission percentages in the industry as a freight broker agent. Check out firststarlogistics.com.
Chris Collinsworth, everybody knows that guy a little bit from his broadcast talents, but he was a hell of a receiver as well.
Yeah, you know, when he was a rookie, you couldn't let that aw shucks attitude, kind of get to you a little bit. But, you know, Chris was a real good athlete. You know, He started off as a quarterback, at Florida. You know, I think at one time he was the 100-yard dash champion in high school in the state of Florida, where there's a lot of athletes, in Florida. But he was a student of the game. He worked harder, off the field than sometimes he gave the impression that he could. And, he just had this lanky style, and people, said, well, he's not that fast. And next thing you know, he's by him. And he had a great feel on how to run routes and certainly great hands.
And what about Dan Ross, the late, great Dan Ross at the tight end position in that Super Bowl 16 team?
Gumby, how he contorted his body to make some catches, I'll never know. But, I give Lindy Infante, a lot of credit for our success and my success. And, we were the first ones to do a lot of option routes, in the passing game. And, Danny could, get off the line of scrimmage, and I knew by, where his body position was on the linebacker, which way he was going to break, and I could throw it early, and he would go around no matter where the ball was, he could make the catch.
Let's talk about some of your records. And you've got a myriad, I think almost 30 still in the Cincinnati Bengals record book. It's crazy. You've written that record book. 1974, you win your first passing title, quarterback rating in 95.7 that season. Then you followed up in 75 with another title, 93.9 quarterback rating. Then in 81 Super Bowl season, you're MVP of the league that year. 29 touchdown passes, a mere 10 interceptions, 3,754 yards, 98.4 quarterback rating. And then in 82, you complete 70.6% of the passes, strike shortened year, but still 9 games, 70.6%, 95.3 quarterback rating. You are the only – now, there's only 5 quarterbacks that have 4 passing titles, only 5. You are the only one that has won back-to-back passing titles in 2 different decades with 2 different coordinators, 2 different schemes, 2 different sets of teammates. That's unbelievable.
Well, it's kind of like nice to look back at that. But when you look back at that 74, 75, 76 team that we had, wow, what a collection of offensive linemen, Dave. You were a part of all that, Bob Johnson and Howard Fest and Guy Dennis and Rufus Mays and Vernon Holland. We had weapons on the outside. Was Essex Johnson as good a running back as the Bengals have ever had? Yeah. Unfortunately, his career was cut short with a leg injury. And then, all of a sudden you come back to 81 and 82, and people thought my career was over. But we drafted this guy number 1, some guy named Muñoz. And then we had, some other big guy, Max Montoya. We had Blair Bush, another number 1 draft choice. Bujnak was a rotating guard. Mike Wilson, what would have been a first-round draft choice had he not tore up his knee at Georgia and went to Canada for a couple of years. Yep. But, we had good players, and that's why I had success.
You had some incredible success. There's no question about it. And like I said, MVP in the 81 season. I want to make sure I get all these right because it's pretty staggering. Most valuable player. You win the Burt Bell Award. You're also NFL Offensive Player of the Year. You're NFL Comeback Player of the Year. That's all in 1981. You, of course, UPI AFC Offensive Player of the Year as well. First team All-Pro. Just swept the deck in 81. But you're real proud of, in 1975, you were NFL Man of the Year, not just for the Cincinnati Bengals, for the entire National Football League. And I know that's a source of pride. What does that mean to you?
Well, they talk about the NFL Hall of Fame, which is a real exclusive club. But you talk about the NFL Man of the Year. they only do one of those a year. That's an even more exclusive club. And you know, when you think about it, Dave, I'm so proud of that because it's not only what you do, you know, on the field. I think that may have been my first Pro Bowl year, but it's what you do off the field. And you know, that's another thing about the group of guys that we played with and all our teammates is, you know, how much they did in the community, not only during their playing days, you know, but after their career was over. You know, you were so active, still are today. You know, the job that Anthony does, Jimmy Breach is so involved in the community. And that's why I'm really excited for Joe Burrow. You know, it's not only, you know, his quarterbacking ability, you know, but I really love his poise. I love his leadership skills. I love that he knows he has a platform to make a difference, and he's doing that.
Let's continue discussion of Joe Burrow because there was Greg Cook. He unfortunately has a tragic injury that, you know, shortens what could have been a very brilliant career. Then you're soon thereafter. And then you're followed by Boomer Esiason. That's a pretty good run of boom, boom, boom. Three pretty good quarterbacks that were picked by the franchise. Do you think Joe Burrow has the makeup mentally and physically to be amongst the greats that we just talked about?
I have no question about that, Dave. You know, and like I say, it's just, you know, you've seen what he can do on the field. And I know he got hurt last year, but, you know, we've seen what he can do. He's got the release, the quickness, the smarts. He can operate the offense, but he's got tremendous leadership skills. I mean, he's the whole package. And, you know, you mentioned, you know, the good years that I had, you know, in the mid 70s and then the 80s, and then Boomer comes and takes us to a Super Bowl. And, you know, the common theme among that was we had a great offensive line in front of us and we had great teammates. And so, like I say, we need to put the pieces together with Joe. And if we can do that, he can take us where we want to go.
Yeah, there's no question about it. Now you coach, you had a successful coaching career as well. You won a Super Bowl, you won a world championship with the Pittsburgh Steelers. You coached Ben Roethlisberger, you coached other great quarterbacks. When you were looking at quarterbacks, Kenny, when you were in the league coaching and you were evaluating quarterbacks, what were your major traits that you were looking for? What were the things you didn't want to compromise on when you were evaluating quarterbacks?
Well, I think number one is the throwing motion, their release, because that's something, you know, you can't change at that point in time. And, you know, I remember when Byron Leftwich came in the league, we drafted him number one when I was down in Jacksonville. And, you know, he had that wind-up release. And you do things, but you can't change at that point the way a quarterback throws the football.
Right.
I think the other thing is a little athletic ability. And I used to always tell the quarterbacks at the combine, you know, the only thing I'm looking for is your release, a little bit of arm strength, and I'm looking at your feet. I don't care how you drop back. I just want to make sure that you're athletic enough that I can teach you what I want you to learn and how to drop back.
That's all pretty good requisites right there. Is there a season? Obviously 1981, the Super Bowl season, but the 1975 season, the 1981 season, are those the two most memorable in your mind?
I think so. You know, although we won the division in 73,
yep.
In 75, we were a wild card team. And if my memory serves me right, you know, there was only one wild card back in those days, and Pittsburgh was 12-2. We were 11-3.
Yep.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think Houston and Cleveland might both have been 10-4, would have won any other division, but they weren't even a wild card team. So, you know, I think that was, and then to go out, we went out to play Oakland in the Oakland Alameda County Coliseum,
yes.
You know, and lost a tough one out there by 3 points. And, you know, it was, that was kind of, you know, a magical year, you know, kind of the first 11-win season that we had. And of course, you know, when you talk about 81, and I guess especially because I got benched after the first quarter in the first game of the year. And my quarterback rating was 2.5, and I ended up leading the league in passing. So I don't know if that's been done before. I'm
telling you, that is, I mean, any young athlete that wants a lesson in overcoming adversity should just look at that. Just look at that, listen to that, and understand that you know, it's just one of those days in the opener against Seattle, and then you come back and you get MVP of the league, and lead the league in every passing category you can possibly lead in. And that's some serious makeup there, my man.
Yeah, well, what was fun about that year, Dave, is of course that was the year the stripes came on the uniforms, and
Yep.
I think it was Collinsworth said, "Well, we better play good, or we'll get laughed out of the league."
Right.
But all of a sudden, even it started at the beginning of the year, but we had 5 games in November, and they said if you want to go to the playoffs, you got to win in November, and we played 5 playoff caliber teams in November, and we didn't have a close game.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, and I think Mike Brown's wife, Nancy, was probably more responsible than anybody, the banners that started showing up at Riverfront Stadium. And then now the faces are painted, and you've got the orange striped wigs. And I think, that's when, a lot of things started for the franchise.
When you look at it, the 75 team, like you said, 11-3. The next year we go 10-4, and we don't make the playoffs because there's only one wild card team. We go 10-4 though. In a 2-year stretch, we're 21-7. I mean, that's a pretty good team. And then 81-82. 81 we go 12-4. The following year go 7-2. So those 2-year stretches there, around those really good teams, it carried over for another season. We had a pretty good run going in those little runs.
Yeah, then it doesn't take much, Dave, for that to fall off the wagon. A player, leaving here or there, or an injury here or there, and you become a 500 team, and that's why it's you got to cherish those moments because you don't know when they're going to happen again.
So which coach, Bill Walsh, Lindy Infante, both brilliant offensive coordinators with different schematics, but were there more similarities than people realize? Which offense was easier to run, or which offense did you have a preference for? Did you like them both equally well?
Yeah, I think both equally. I mean, I think the terminology was so much different with Lindy. It was when we rather than split right, it was 2 flip wide, and they're just
Right.
and how you structured things. And then, like I say, we were on the cutting edge of doing a lot of these option routes. We not only Danny Ross, but the smash route on the outside on the with our receivers, and and Lindy was just a very innovative guy, and like I say, that was probably pretty refreshing for me that I've been through the West Coast system up until that point,
Right.
and so I knew the terminology, so it kind of made me buckle down and relearn again. And Lindy, I owe him so much because we sat down and in 78 and 79, and I was hurt a lot but wasn't playing well, and we kind of analyzed a lot of those films and analyzed some of the films back to 75, and I just developed some bad habits. So he worked with me in the off season to get rid of those bad habits and set me up for success.
So you mentioned a while back during the conversation that so many of you and so many of your teammates do a lot of things in the community and a lot of great things for people. Tell us about the Ken Anderson Alliance, the KAA, that you're involved with and doing such great things with these days, Kenny.
Well, our mission is to create live, work, and engage opportunities for adults with disabilities. And, right now we have 20-some engage outings a month that service over 230 adults, where they go out in small groups out into the community. One of the things, if you've got a developmental disability, sometimes you can get isolated, in your home. And so to go out, and whether it's putt-putt, whether it's to dinner, whether it's to go play games, whether it's to go volunteer at another nonprofit, they really enjoy those things. So that's exciting. From a work aspect, we have an aquaponics venture up and running, O2 Urban Farms, where we're growing lettuce in water indoors, which is also a source of employment. And we just opened up on Plainfield Road in Silverton, our Just Brew coffee shop, which employs 14 adults with disabilities. So that's, again, it's real jobs and real wages to help these people live as independently as possible.
That's awesome, Kenny. And the ring of honor, getting back to that as we close things out. And again, appreciate you carving all the time you did for us. You're phenomenal. The pride, it's a celebratory thing. What was it like? What do you think it will be like when you get the call from the Hall of Fame that you're a Hall of Famer in Canton, Ohio. Do you think the Ring of Honor could be a stepping stone to finally getting the recognition that you deserve and being in the Hall of Fame in Canton?
I have no idea, Dave. I'm just so excited to be in part of the first class that the Bengals have. And, I think it's long overdue. And I think we have so many great players that deserve the recognition that I'm excited that this is the process. And I'm very grateful to Elizabeth Blackburn, who kind of instigated this whole thing and got it to the forefront. So, and with the Hall of Fame, I truly don't know what the criteria, what they look for to be a Hall of Famer. So I don't worry too much about that. I'm just excited that on September 30th, my grandkids never got to see me play except maybe on my one grandson's pretty good on pulling up old videos on YouTube, but they'll all get to see Grandpa go out in the field one more time.
Yeah, you're looking forward to September 30th. I mean, it's got a dinner. It's also the celebration, the 40th year, Kenny, the 40th year celebration of our 1981 Super Bowl team and that went to Super Bowl 16. A little kind of combination, Ring of Honor, honoring the Super Bowl team in 1981. That's going to be a fun day, isn't it?
Yeah, to go in with with the first class, but to have my teammates around me for that one. And I was telling somebody, more than the induction ceremony, I'm looking forward to the times when we can all be together and just share a beer and tell stories. That'll be the real special part of the weekend.
Yeah, it is going to be a hell of a good time. Well, all I can say is it bugs the hell out of me that you're not in the Hall of Fame. So I don't know what it does to you, because I'll tell you that is, in my mind, as big an injustice as there is in any sports Hall of Fame that Ken Anderson is not in Canton, Ohio.
Well, Dave, it may bug you, and to be honest with you, it doesn't bother me a bit.
Really?
I look back that, here's a kid from Batavia, Illinois. Here's a kid from Division III, Augustana, that got to come into the National Football League, got to come to Cincinnati, which was a great place to live, and play professional football for 16 years. And then, which led to me kind of sharing the broadcast booth with you for 6 years, and then going to a coaching career for 17 years. So,
right.
I am just so lucky that my life has been, so blessed to let me be a part of football for that long.
What would you have done, Kenny? You got an accounting degree. You're very analytical. You're very, very brilliant with numbers and analyzation of things. What do you think you would have done if you hadn't gone into playing professional football and broadcasting and coaching?
Well, I didn't have an accounting degree, Dave. I had a law degree. Number one, I got when I was
That's
20,
right.
but I was a math major
Okay.
in college. So, no, my plan was all along, you've met him, my Uncle Gary, who's always been like an older brother to me more than an uncle. And he was a high school math teacher and a football and basketball coach, and he was my idol. And that's what I wanted to do. And in fact, it was, when the Bengals drafted me, it was kind of a tough decision whether to come down here because, what chances am I going to have? And I had a job lined up at New Trier West High School in Chicago with him, which was my dream job. And so I was just, hoping that I could land that job. And, he and I talked, and, all of a sudden he says, Kenny, if you don't go down, you're always going to wonder.
I'll tell you what, that was the best advice you've ever gotten. And man, did you make the right decision? Because here you are with, just an unbelievable, brilliant career. What a life you've led, Mr. Anderson.
Yeah. Well, the best decision I made, Dave, was to room with you.
Yeah.
We got a bunch of years in together, and that was always a treat. And my favorite story about you and I rooming together is showing up in Pontiac, Michigan, and we get the key to our room, and we walk in, and there's no bed, and I say, "Oh, MVP of the league, we got a suite." And then you're trying to open up the doors on either side of the room, and they're all locked, and we realize there's a pull-down bed from the wall, and that's what I said, Dave. You and I aren't going to fit in that bed together. Berto better give us something else.
We're friends, but not that close, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that was crazy, man. That was crazy. Well, I'll tell you, Kenny, it was an honor to play with you, and it's great that you're getting the recognition that is so richly deserved. You're a hell of a player, and an even better human being, my man, and appreciate you spending all this time with us. I really do.
Well, Dave, whenever you need me, all you got to do is call.
You're the best. Number 14 in your program, number 1 in your heart. Ken Anderson.
Thanks, Dave.
Hi, Dave Lapham here. Have you heard about In the Trenches with Dave Lapham, presented by First Star Logistics? Catch new episodes from the world of sports and broadcasting. Search for In the Trenches with Dave Lapham on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.